Howdy. Is luck the actual reason why you will not retire early? This video is being made today, and we'll see how I feel afterwards, if I want to leave it up or not, because I can't move my face. Went to the dentist this morning, had some work done, fixing a goof I did a couple of weeks ago. And I'm talking to the dentist before 5 people stick 10 hands in my mouth and I can't talk and I just have to listen to the suicidally depressing crap that I had to listen to, which made me think of this video. Is luck the reason why I was able to retire early? I retired in 2022 after 12 years of investing and made work optional because I'm super lazy and I wanted to be able to travel and scuba dive and do whatever I want all the time. So, because I'm me, I share my information with everybody. I make a YouTube channel, I answer questions on Facebook, I'm one of the admins for the BiggerPockets Facebook groups, I'm a teaching assistant for the BiggerPockets boot camps, I'm in the one rental at a time community as much as I can, sharing my strategy with people on how you can be a lazy person, work full-time, raise kids, start from a bad position, reach financial freedom, make work optional. You can continue to work if you want to. I'm with Ryan, all-nighter hider, on making our own luck. I had to make my own pension since those kept getting taken away from me. But here's the luck I had, right? The Marine Corps downsized after Desert Storm, the law enforcement downsized after 2008. And so I started investing in real estate, and after about 12 years, I was able to make work optional. So I'm talking to the dentist this morning. Oh, of course, you have those few minutes when they're waiting for the numbing stuff to kick in. And I mentioned I'm retired. I mentioned I want to make a YouTube video later today, but my face is probably not going to work because that's how this works. And he says, oh, you make YouTube, what about? And I guitarred. I said, well, I teach people how to retire early. He asked if I was into, what did he say? His question was, oh, so you do financial advising? I said, no. I invest in rentals. So it's like the opposite of financial advising, because financial advisors don't want to talk to me as soon as I say I have rentals because they have no way to profit off of me. So he says, oh, I had a rental. And I was like, oh, this is cool. So then his hands are in my mouth, which is not weird at all. And he explains how he'll never own a rental again in his life and how it was one of the worst experiences. Now, here's why luck is the factor. His experience and my experience are almost the same. I don't want to say identical because there's some switches, but some differences. We buy a rental, first year's horrible. He purchased a rental and had it in 2020, just before a pandemic happened. So we had a stock market crash and then recovery. He had an eviction moratorium. He had tenants didn't have to pay rent and you couldn't kick them out. So he had a tenant, didn't pay rent for a while, finally got caught up. So I had a bad year. Tenant kind of trashed the place, wasn't taking care of it. And then some weird story of when he went to sell, the tenant was an agent. So he let the agent sell so he could try to recoup money. That was a weird thing. But it was a horrible story. It was in an HOA. The HOA was fining him for things the tenant was doing. And, I couldn't respond. I couldn't say anything because, 10 hands in your mouth. And my first year was very similar. Now, I'm still friends with the guy, so I kind of don't like to talk about it too much because it makes him feel like I'm calling him out. We're still friends, and everything that happened in my first year was my mistake. It was my fault because I set this up. Right? I was a brand new landlord. Now, this dentist used a property manager because he figured, he's working full time. I mean, he works like 10, 12-hour days, 4 days a week. He gets his weekends, but he's going to work another 15 years because of what his first experience was like as a landlord. He used a property manager that didn't do a very good job and didn't evict the tenant or didn't even start the process when the tenant was late. Didn't hold the tenant accountable once the eviction moratorium was lifted. I mean, that was all the negative things. He owns in an HOA. So I would have said, this is why I make a YouTube channel, to teach people not to make these mistakes, but I didn't want to call the guy out while he was in a position to hurt me. So my first tenant started paying the rent late. And since I was a brand new landlord, I didn't feel like a landlord, so I didn't have a lease. I figured, who can trust a stranger? I better rent to a friend. And when the rent was late, I figured he's a single parent, I was a single parent, so I kind of understood, and then late became never. And when I went to have a face-to-face conversation at the house, he actually worked where I did, I didn't want to talk that at work, I went to the house to talk to him. He didn't live there. He'd moved out and rented it out to somebody else. House was kind of trashed, started building a wall, not to code, no permits, trashed some other things. I had a really bad experience. My experience and the dentist experience was almost identical, and here's why luck is the factor. Is luck why you won't retire early? That's the question for this video. This is a nice short live on my phone where I don't usually see the chat, but if you want your questions answered during a live stream, every Tuesday, 4 p.m. Pacific, I do lives on a computer where I can see the chat, and I do them as long as I can to answer all the questions. I wanted to quit just like him. I told several people, anybody who has a mortgage is an idiot. I don't never want to own a house. I was underwater on my house, tenant was treating it bad, I wasn't collecting rent. It's just a bad experience all the way around. Here's the luck. I owned my rental right after the 2008 housing crash. I said I was underwater. What that means is I owed more money on the house than I could sell it for. So here's where luck might be why you never retire early and why that dentist is not going to retire early. My first experience with a tenant and his first experience with a tenant was equally as negative. 2 negatives make an equal. There you go, it's almost positive. So his house had appreciated because of what happened in 2020, 21, 2022. He sold it, got out, maybe recouped the money he lost, figured out he's got his money, he's doing a different type of investing, which I would like to ask him about. Not one I would like to do, but maybe make a video about. And I couldn't. I tried to give the house away. Right? I went to an agent friend of mine, basically a friend who said, I'll sell your house, no commission. I offered to take him to dinner at El Gaucho's, which is about the same as a commission. So I was underwater. I couldn't do subject to. Subject to works if your house is worth more than you owe, because then somebody might want to buy it. So nobody even wanted to do that. Couldn't give it away. Found somebody who could potentially take it. They tried to qualify for almost a year, fell through, became a tenant. Because here's my luck. My luck was so bad I couldn't give the house away that I was then forced to find audiobooks, podcasts, YouTube University, educate myself, because that was the mistake that me and the dentist make. We thought we can do this. I was working full-time running a CDL school. He's running his own practice, racked up the student debt to become a dentist. Maybe he's paid it off, I didn't ask. Took out business loans to open his own practice. He's got staff working for him. He's got all the responsibilities that I had. So working that many hours, how is it worth it to buy a rental if it's that negative? His experience and my experience first year were so similar. He quit, I tried to. My luck was I couldn't. Here's where your luck might be bad enough to where you'll never retire early. If you buy a rental this year and your experience is so negative, so bad, that you hate it and you want to quit like I did and he did, you probably have some equity. Interest rates are coming down, creating more demand, prices are going to surge. It would probably be easier to sell. You might walk away broke even, or maybe make a little bit of money and then just continue to work for the next 15 years like that dentist is. He's my age, he's going to work until his 60s. I was lucky enough to not have equity, to not have the escape plan, to not have the exit strategy of, if I don't like this, I'll just bail, because I didn't like it. I was terrible at it. The things that I teach on this channel are things it took a decade to learn, right? The 2 or 3 years in is when the binder strategy was developed, where my tenants asked me to raise the rent. What's your luck like? If you start investing this year, let's say you pick stocks and you watch Joe Kuhn here on YouTube and you educate yourself, and then there's a recession and your stocks don't do so well. Will you just take the loss and figure, I'll work, I'll continue to contribute to my 401k, I'll rely on Social Security and Medicare, and just work until you're so old you can't enjoy your retirement? Is your luck so bad that you might not be able to retire early? Do you buy a rental and you have a horrible tenant? Your first one is usually going to be the worst, because it's our mistakes that give us the bad tenants. Yeah, you can have a bad one after 10 or 15 years, that can happen. But most times the first tenant is the worst, because you don't know your screening criteria. You might not have picked the property that attracts the best tenant, because the best tenants don't want to rent the ones that don't have things like a washer dryer, aren't next to loud things like a busy street or a club or an airport, or just in the wrong neighborhood. We make all of those mistakes when we're getting our legs under us, that we make so many mistakes, we get a bad tenant, often in the beginning, where people quit. If you have 3 or 4 rentals, or let's say right now I have 8 properties, 18 rentals, a couple $100,000 in profit every year after taxes and expenses and setting aside for repairs, maintenance, and vacancy, that if I have a bad tenant now, it sucks. But I'm not gonna quit and sell them all and go back to work. That only happens on that first or second deal. It is luck. You have an opportunity right now on YouTube to educate yourself from people who've learned those mistakes on that first tenant. Have a lease, have screening criteria, pay a retainer for an attorney for an eviction to be ready for it. When a tenant is late, like his tenant was, or my tenant was, the day after the grace period, as a favor to the tenant, file for eviction. Because there's rent relief out there that they can't even apply for until they have the eviction papers in their hands. This is not something a new landlord knows unless you watch content where people share this stuff with you. So I had another video I wanted to make today, but I think I'll wait for this weekend because this one was bothering me. And I figured including the dentist in the story would explain why my mouth isn't working very well. How lucky are you? Because good luck could cost you your early retirement. Have a day full of awesome.